Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone? Very low energy. Come on, how is everyone? Okay. We hope you're having a great conference and hope you enjoyed the talks this morning. I'm super excited today to be hosting some really interesting people. You will see what I mean when I say interesting in a second. We have with us today Leah, who is what I call a PLG Olympian. She took a train yesterday from Zurich. I'm hoping she has a carte avantage adulte, not sure, but anyway. She used to teach breakdancing for 15 years, guys. And funny thing, you might have heard her give a lot of shit to Gary, the salesman. But guess who fell asleep during her first job in front of her boss? This lady. Today, we also have with us Oji Udezwe. Oji is a product leader who is building a venture company in Africa in real time as we speak. Do not ask me what that means. When you meet Oji for the first time, he opens up with, "Hi, I'm Oji, and my tax residency is Austin, Texas. And otherwise, I'm locationless." Also, don't ask me what that means. His first job after graduating high school at the age of 15 was to work as a foreman in a food processing factory, which was obviously a logical first step in becoming an AI expert.
An informant?
What?
An informant? Did you work for the police?
A foreman.
A foreman.
I built the factory, actually.
We can get all into that, don't worry. We also have Claire Lebars with us today. Claire has lived 12 years in San Francisco, where she worked at Airbnb. She is an expert when it comes to building AI and data products. She is not only a reinforcement learning expert within the AI realm, but also for the animal kingdom. Claire does reinforcement learning for dogs. So if you need tips to train your dog, Claire is the expert. Go find her after this talk. Please give us a round of applause for our guests today. We are going to talk about AI because why not, right? There's a lot of buzz around AI, a lot of hype. But I guess one of the questions that I get the most is, how do we use AI as product managers? Should we be using AI as product managers? What happens if we don't use AI? So today we're going to talk a little bit about this. Before we get into the details, I'm Axel Sooriah. I'm a product management evangelist at Atlassian. I'm also a board member at LPC, and I host a podcast called Product Squad. Thank you for being with us today. First question, let's do a quick survey around the room. How many people in here can say they use AI tools every day at work? Okay. I'd say pretty much a third of the room. And I'll have a first question for our panelists today. What if, as a PM, I am not using AI tools today? So what? What's the worst that can happen? Leah?
Axel, what's going to happen? I think it's a good question, but it's also a bit of a weird question because, I mean, what is your job as a PM? It has very little to do with what kind of tools you use. I was about to make a joke about Jira, but he's working for Atlassian.
Go ahead.
So.
I've built some shield for this kind of joke, so don't worry.
Okay. So I think ultimately your job is to create business value in some kind of way, right? Like revenue. And everybody's nodding. But unfortunately, most of the PMs that I know do not know when they build, what they build, how that is connected to the revenue of their company. And why does this matter? What has this to do with AI? AI is really, really good in kind of making generalistic things easier like fixing your shitty queries that you have to run on Metabase because they do not work, because you made a spelling mistake and you cannot figure it out, and the data guy is just not there, and you're afraid of asking your superior for help. So I think ChatGPT, for instance, is very good in kind of analyzing and understanding these contextual problems. So if anything, it should help you to get unstuck. And I think if you as a PM are not using AI in your daily work, then you're really missing out, not just because of what it can do for you, but also so you learn what are the actual limitations of AI. Because we are building with AI. We have to do stuff with AI. And all this bullshit that is happening on LinkedIn where everybody tells you how awesome it is and how it's going to do everything, it's just simply not true. We are living in the 90% that it does, and not in the other 10%. So you are the people who have to kind of understand this. And this is why I say always, like, I think you should use it. Even if you're not using it for yourself, you should know what the limitations are. When does AI start to hallucinate? When do you stop using it on a daily basis? Because creating pictures of squirrels that are holding beers and are running up a, I don't know, a red car, that's fun, but that's not what you do on your daily work. So I think it's important to differentiate between the hype and the things that you're doing on a daily basis. Long answer, satisfying?
Go ahead. I'm happy.
That was ChatGPT, by the way.
Yeah. I have a strange feeling Oji might not agree with this perspective. I don't know.
No, I don't disagree, but I want to defend red squirrels holding beers.
Go red squirrels.
Nothing wrong with that. Go for it.
I want to defend them. Look, I'll just be blunt. If you're not using AI, it's a huge mistake. And I'm not even saying that, on one hand, sure, as a PM, and I'll go into that a bit, but even as a person, which is why I'm defending the red squirrels and whatever, you should be playing with this stuff all the time. When new stuff comes out, the most important thing is just immersion. It doesn't even matter what you do with it. Immerse yourself in it until it gets into your blood. That's the only way to be creative with it. If you use it occasionally, you won't get native. If you listen to my talk, you'll hear me talk about that. But as a PM, like Leah was talking about what PMs do, we are multidisciplinary, right? By nature. You have to understand a little bit of engineering, a little bit of design, a little bit of sales, a little bit of business model. You have to understand leadership dynamics, a little bit of anthropology, and behavioral economics. Every day, you are the center of a wheel around a company. What is transformer-based LLMs? If not a system to understand humans and generate the knowledge that humans have already amassed with, by the way, a copy of the internet in its brain. If you're a generalist like a PM, isn't that exactly what you need? To know how to do SQL queries, to know how to write a little bit of code, to know how to do all the things that confront you every day. If that's not a reason to experiment, I don't know what is.
Claire, you are Chief AI and Data Officer at Malt. What is your perspective on this?
Yeah, I agree. I think actually if you're not using AI, which is what your question was about, you'll likely be replaced by a PM who is using AI. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year. It's going to take maybe longer than people think. That's always like the misconception. And there are two elements. There's a productivity aspect, which you talked about, like your workflows, and I think we can go into how they may evolve the workflows. I think there's a lot of unknown there and a lot of exciting things already happening. But also in how you're going to approach creating solutions, designing features for the users. AI is not new. Been building a product with machine learning. I think it's only been maybe a year, 2 years since we dare to say AI in the machine learning community. But we've been building product with advanced machine learning for years. Look at your iPhone; it's full of advanced machine learning and AI. Google Maps, maybe one of the most advanced AI products out there. Gen AI is a new brick, but my strong point of view, and I'm biased obviously because I work on AI every day, is I think if you have AI in your toolkit, it doesn't mean you should put AI everywhere, right? But if you have AI in your toolkit as a technological brick, it means it's going to give you more tools, right, to design better solutions for the users.
Okay, let's get a little bit in the detail, and I want to try and understand whether there is such a moment where we'll be able to say, it's basically too late, I've missed the AI train. Do you think like there is such a moment? Is it now? Is it in 1 year? Is it in 2 years? Like, what's your view on this?
No. But
No what?
there is no moment where it's too late. But just remember that it's a little bit of a race. It's a competition. Like Claire said, it's like, AI is not going to replace your job, but already, like, you know, developers talk about 10x developers, right? Do 10x developers ever want a job? They're never out of a job, right? If they have the reputation, if they have proof of that. And so your expertise with AI will start to differentiate between people who are really, really good. Especially if I mean, imagine people who are, everyone knows PMs on their team who are beasts. And now they have AI to even be monsters, if that makes sense. And I mean that in a positive way. So it's a race. So the earlier the better, basically. But I don't think there's a point of no return. I mean, there are people still coming out of college who are becoming PMs, right? And they don't know anything about AI. But will they be able to use those tools well? So no. There's always a starting point for you. I don't want to make people feel hopeless. There's no point of no return.
Leah, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What is a key activity that you now support with AI that's been a game changer for you in your like workflows day to day?
So I think for myself, I look at it more generalistic in the sense of like organizing information that is just an absolute terrible mess. My experience as a CPO has been whenever I come into a company, there's a lot of spreadsheets and slides and tools, Notion, Confluence. Notion, Confluence, and so forth. And so the problem is like you never really know like where your information is. And I think AI is not just about the queries that you give it and then it gives you kind of a good answer. But what people also really need to think about is that even with ChatGPT, you can train a model like this also on your own data and also personalize it. So I am someone that has dyslexia. I'm not very good in writing stuff that makes perfect sense because I mix up words that sound the same. I called him an informant before, but he was a foreman. I was like, to me, that sounds
Maybe
the
he's
same.
an informant also, we just don't know.
No, but like for me, this has been an extreme game changer. So in so many aspects, like I don't know how many of you are using Grammarly or similar tools, but this is something that gets me out of my anxiety of like making mistakes. I went into a meeting with the board and I started to mix up terms. And I noticed 10 minutes later whether I started to mix up really similar sounding terms. And this is anxiety for me, right? So these tools are helping me to kind of iron out my very obvious weaknesses when I'm communicating. It catches mistakes. And that's been extremely helpful for me. So what I do is I aggregate information. I train also models with stuff. And ironically, also, we talked about this before. I used to be a head of product in an AI company, like building an actual model. So at Jua, we were building a weather prediction set, machine learning from start to end, incredibly complex, incredibly big, just like probably ChatGPT 3.5 in size. And I'm supposed to read science papers. I'm dyslexic. Have you seen science papers? They're not fun to read.
Nope.
This is something where I see a blurry wall of text in front of me, specifically when we're going to formulas and so forth. And I need AI to help me understand this stuff, right? To explain it to me. And it's been with very, very great pleasure and success that I've been keep using this. So my short answer to this, which I already passed, I would say is that I'm using it to iron out my weaknesses in a day-to-day job. And yeah, I use it for that, also for like fixing my SQL queries and doing that kind
On
of stuff.
Metabase, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Claire, what have you used AI for in your day-to-day workflows?
Yeah, on day-to-day workflow. So not building product, right?
Not building products.
Day-to-day workflow. So personally, what I enjoy the most is talking to my phone. It sounds weird to say it like that. But it helps me take notes, translate that.
So transcription?
Exactly, transcription, summary. I'm starting to get into the interactive aspect also to help develop the ideas, refine
Especially
the
now
thinking.
with GPT-4o, right?
Yep.
Who came up with that name?
I don't know, man. Don't ask me.
Oh,
It means
Omni,
I think
right?
the O means omni.
okay.
Yeah.
Because multimodal?
So jumping from 4 to 40 would have been weird, right?
Yeah.
An X. Yeah, so that's the
Sorry.
main one. And at work, in terms of like the team dynamics,
Yep.
the biggest impact we've seen is in teams developing their assistants, right? Their own assistant, mostly on Slack.
So to help them do what exactly?
So many creative stuff. Like, surprise, like every week there's a new ID, people testing things. So there was one, obviously, on understanding the product. We're in the B2B, B2C space, so there's a lot of complexities across many countries and whatnot, and people ask it, how does that work? Typical use case. One I didn't expect is actually the team created a pitch coach. How do I pitch this feature? And it's actually Tristan was giving a talk on on that, who created that for the team and got good adoption. Things around content, around engineering code base. It's really, and what's fun about that is that each team is testing things by themselves without being blocked by a technical team to set that up. It's like assistant as a platform, and it makes them save a lot of time versus asking the expert, go search. We were not a company with a lot of like strong documentation, and so when I joined the company a year and a half ago, I was like, oh wow, we're gonna have such like a lot of work to end up mature as a company. And what I love to see with the assistant is that the person in the team who's in charge of the assistant for the team is actually, it sees, depending on the quality of the answer, where they need to improve the documentation. It gives them a lot more, surgical approach to improving content.
Brilliant. Thank you. Oji?
A couple of things. Last night, when I left you, I wanted to write an addendum to the book.
I inspired you to add something to your book? That's super cool, man.
That was a no
So-
laugh.
Yeah, I know.
So I sat down with my publisher. He recorded a bunch of things that I said, and we turned that into like a section very quickly. It took less than an hour. It was my voice, my ideas, but we used it as a way to sort of compose it. So I use that a lot. You can do that also for, all kinds of, PMs. Honestly, like most of what we do is not really marking our roadmaps. We write, we communicate. You spend a lot of time in documents, and so this is very, very useful for us. And not just any plain document, but structured ones, right? Because some of that structure is actually in the training data. The other thing that I do is actually write code, because there's always a tool that I want to write for myself. I don't want to sell it. But now I can just the code interpreters are so good. I just write a Chrome extension to do something very specific that I want. And maybe the last thing is, retrieval augmented, I just upload a document. And then I start asking questions about the document.
Yep.
Excel file, PDF, and so on and so forth. Like if you have customer interviews or customer listening, churn data, and you don't have a software that actually does that bespoke because it'll cost you a license, you take the raw data, put it in CSV, upload it, and start asking questions, and it will do a really good job. So those are some of the ways.
So this morning you talked about workflows during your talk.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm interested in is when I hear product managers talk about AI and their use of AI on a daily basis, a lot of it is like incremental productivity gains, which is fine, right? Like it's targeted to a lot of like low value items. Is there such a thing where PMs can actually use AI to supercharge them in the craft itself, like the work we have to do about the strategic thinking, the articulation of like why this is the right thing to do. I can see there's Remy in the audience, our product discovery champion. Like, how can we use AI for product discovery? Like, what are some of the high leverage use cases or workflows where you see AI can really be a game changer?
So a few maybe sort of correlated thoughts. I think the reason that product management can be hard, I'm not saying it's hard, but I'm saying that it's, there's very few schools for being a PM. People are starting to do that, but it's not like a thing. And part of the reason is that it's a multidisciplinary thing. You can come from engineering, you can come from design, you can even be an English major, as long as you know how to solve problems. And part of what's so difficult, we don't have a Figma. You have all these, AHA roadmap tools, but that's not the PMOS. Is that in product management, there are like 5 to 10 things going on, workflows. Team leadership, communication, documentation. There's just a bunch. And so defining the PM workflow is hard, the essential PM workflow. So I think it's not so much...
Because there's no standard.
Yeah, it's not so much, is there a tool or is there like a thing to do? It's that we span a lot of things. And it changes from, if you're working in a B2B SaaS company, if you're working in a consumer company, you're working for Caterpillar in their technology department, it might be very different. And so I basically think your question is, one thing I've noticed is in writing the book, I wrote, because one of the things people ask me all the time, people mid-career is like, you say strategy, how do you develop it? What is a benchmark for good strategy? Even if I create one, and I don't know how, what is a good strategy? And so it turns out that GPT has a lot of like classic strategy books in its corpus and so on and so forth. So if you ask it a question like, I'm in this kind of company, what is a good strategy? And how does that compare? It will help you. It might not solve the entire problem, but it will give you hints. And how do you get that before? You either have to go for an MBA or call some of your mentors and say, hey, how do I do this? You have a template and so on and so forth. A lot of that stuff can get you started. All these tools are like autocomplete. They get you started off blank paper. And starting off blank paper is huge for a lot of us. So I can't say that it's one big thing, but I can say that your need for mentorship, your need for starting off blank paper, your need for having a specific template that you trust has just decreased because of these tools. And I think that goes for a lot for PMs.
Claire, I'm interested in your perspective on this perception sometimes that I have, and I think other people share when they're in an organization and they're a PM, and sometimes there might be a perception that they're playing with a new shiny tool instead of focusing on the core of the job. Like, is it a distraction, like especially in this climate? You can see it, right? Like, we talk a lot about profitability, revenue, bottom line. Suddenly, there's like this head of product who's looking at this PMs playing with GPT all day. Like, he goes like, "What's going on there? Like, is this a thing?"
Well, I assume if you're PM, it's because you're curious about technology and products, right? And I assume as curious people, you do spend a lot of time exploring. So I think the challenge is more about like, what do I explore? How do I prioritize all the things I could explore? And obviously, AI and GenAI is a lot more than ChatGPT, even though ChatGPT is a great product. But I assume there's probably part of your week, part of the day that you spend, cultivating that curiosity. And now it's actually one of the most fun time to go deep into that. I think going back to what you were saying, Oji, I think AI is going to enable PM to be closer to users, even more than before, because now we spend so much time actually on the technology, looking at things, building things that without really having like the user there, right? And we always bottleneck by the number of data analysts and machine learning people and dev to do what we want to do. what's interesting is that we're starting to see, and I think it depends on the time horizon we're looking at, but we're already seeing actually a lot more insights coming to the PM directly, right? Whether they are like qualitative or quantitative. I think the quantitative is taking a little longer because it's harder, right? Like to build right. But the qualitative, we already see that one of the assistants, that I was talking about is actually a user research. We call it Caroline for our lead user research. It compiles all of the historic user research we conducted at Malt, enables people to ask questions, and you see the reference to the interviews. You can go back to the video of the
Which
interview.
is a great use case, right? Because there's a lot of disposable research. Like, you do this research project, and then it ends up collecting digital dust on a Google Drive. Nobody reads it.
Yeah, we have a bunch of logs, on engagement on a feature. So I think that's going to. I'm excited about the fact that it's going to enable PM to be closer to the users. That's one side, the insights, and the other side is because the entry to technology is much lower. Back to your question about is it too late to go into AI? Actually, I think it's the best time if you don't know anything about machine learning and AI. You've never built on a data or AI product before. You might actually have an advantage towards people who have that technical bias. I've seen that last year, actually. The people who are the most technical and the most ML savvy were the most reluctant to test and play the technology. So actually, go for it. And the tech side, I think no-code, low-code started, the last few years, lowering the gap to building some things. And my intuition, or what I predict will happen, is that, you can prototype things super quickly. It's not going to scale well. Like if you have a lot of users, that's where you'll need the engineering for that to scale to your load. Like you can create an interesting voice app via OpenAI on the ChatGPT. You give it a little bit of context if you're a paid customer. You're not going to be able to give it a lot of context, right? Maybe you can upload 10, 15 PDF, right? But you can still prototype something interesting.
It's a start. And like you were saying this morning, Audrey, the velocity at which we can experiment now and build software companies, we're just in a different playground, right?
That's right.
Leah, you are probably the biggest product growth expert out there, especially on LinkedIn, I think.
I'd say the second biggest.
Second biggest? I see who you're talking about, I think.
No, she's going to be.
She's not going to be happy.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We're friends. It's fine. Go for it.
We're friends too.
What would you say are some of the biggest opportunities when it comes to product-led growth? Like, how is AI going to change things? Is AI going to change things?
100%. So one of the problems that you all are facing is that 20 years ago, it was enough to build a good product, and then people come. Right? So what we just talked about is essentially it's getting easier and easier and easier and easier to build something. 20 to 30 years ago, I called myself, I'm that old, a web designer. Who in here was called a web designer at some point? What did you do? Everything. From the animated GIFs to the websites, you were coding in HTML and all this kinds of stuff. But it was really, really difficult to get something started. So now we are in a time where with absolute no skills, I mean, I'm not saying that you're unskilled, but like you do not need to know anything in a programming language to create a product. What does that do? The market is not bigger. So there's not more people that are buying your stuff. Sure, like we also get more internet access to people and so forth, and more people that can actually potentially buy your stuff. But the increase in productivity has been so explosive, while the demand for the money that is available to spend on these tools has been remaining more or less steady, but definitely not climbing at the same speed. Now, what does that mean? That means for a simple problem, there are now 30 to 50 to 100 different solutions. Now, what does that mean? It's not about your product anymore. It's not about your product anymore. It's about how do you sell it to the market. And all of this is about product-led growth. And product-led growth means it needs to be simple to test, it needs to be simple to experience, and it needs to be de-risking the customer. What does de-risking the customer mean? It means that it cannot cost a lot. It should be free. I do not want to give my credit card before I know what's going on. Why? Because all the other tools that do not offer this, I do not even look into. Nobody's going to test all the tools in the market anymore, right? They're just like testing out the ones that are simple to use. And this is a train that a lot of product managers have missed because they think their job is building a product. No. Your job is to build a product that can be marketed afterwards, easy to experience, because otherwise you end up with things like Salesforce that are looking extremely bad, complex, and they're not easy to simplify anymore, versus something like HubSpot that is easy to use for someone in a smaller company up to a bigger scale. And a lot of people do not understand that this kind of go-to-market motion, because you're giving this to so many people for free, means that you also have a lot of data. If you cannot interpret this data, and also to your point, what you just said before, who in here is sitting on some kind of documents of like 200 qualitative feedbacks from customers that are not standardized? I can upload that CSV to ChatGPT and say, please sort this by people who are extremely pissed off about us and those that love us, and give me a pie chart. And if you cannot tell me why people are leaving or loving your product in a specific percentage, then this is the first thing that you should do when you're going back. You should either start to collect the data, you should start to interpret the data, because all this is about is, do I know what my product is and how it is also being sold? So all of this is about getting more cross-functional, understanding go-to-market. And I hope this makes sense to people, because what we are in is a commoditized environment. There's a lot of competition out there. And you as a product manager are also a product. And this is why you also need to differentiate yourself. So you need to understand much better also how it is to sell your stuff. I hope it makes sense why this is the case now because of AI.
I'd love to chime in.
Yeah, go ahead. Just one thing. We're going to start a round of questions in about 1 minute. I think we have people ready with microphones in the room. Please start raising your hands if you have questions. We'll bring the mic to you. In the meantime, RG, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that AI and PLG are not on the same plane. I think they're orthogonal. You know, PLG, I think, I'm almost tired of the word, but in the essence, PLG is about centering the customer and building products, like Leah said, that people can approach, it solves their workflow, and it's not complicated to get started. Like a good PLG product does the thing, but it also pays attention to how people experience the thing so that they can buy the thing. And when they experience the product, the ability to get to customer delight quickly because you're paying attention, you're customer listening, you're doing customer discovery, is a core culture in the company that extends even beyond the product team to the engineering team, to the marketing team, to the sales team. That's what it is to build a good PLG company. AI is a tool, right, to accomplish that better. So I don't think it's the same, they're orthogonal. Like, it's like saying, does cloud make PLG? No, it's a tool. And so, so that's the first point I wanted to make. The second one is that Leah is right. If the cost of building software comes down, sorry, I said that as if, whatever, you don't need my validation.
It's not a surprise.
If the cost of building amazing software reduces, already today, just so you know, what Leah is saying is already true. 2/3 of the problem of building a great software company that is profitable, exits, is marketing. Right? You need to make some noise. You need to attract your customers. Building has become easier and easier. Before, people would build crappy products, so if you built a better product, boom, you won. But it's different now. And so if the cost of building great products also reduces, then this problem will exacerbate. Now, the good news is people still build a ton of crappy products. They still do. Right? And so if you are one of the 5% who build really great products, you still got a shot. But marketing is more and more of a problem. This has nothing to do with AI. This has everything to do with focusing on customers solving problems properly in the right sequence with sharp problems. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Questions from our audience? Please, go ahead. Don't be shy.
Nobody's going to ask. I'm going to ask a question.
Go ahead.
No. I need to make sure French PMs really ask, because I won't accept that.
Our friend,
Okay, calm down.
our friend Remy has a question there.
Hello, I have a question for Claire. Can you tell us more about what were the reactions internally when you started to, advocate for more usage of AI? Like, were there people that were big advocates, or maybe people that were more reluctant to give it a try?
I did not advocate to use AI. What happened was a little bit different, where we started to see, obviously, like many companies, some champions in different teams, that thinking and asking me to do more. Want me to do big trainings, so and I'm focusing more on my time on building on our core product for matching, which we didn't talk about, like specifically what's user facing. And there's internal demand from certain champions in team. So we started to think about how we do that in a way that scales, where I don't have to put a lot of resources from the tech team to support the internal momentum we see around productivity and all of that. That's why we decided to do Assistant as a platform. And then it's really like, there's a little bit of like, we showcased the first example. We had some great champions like our VP Design, which you know, which you know very well. And then it started propagating in the company, and people come and like, oh, I'd like to do this thing, and we just open the tool for them. Now, it's true that there are some teams, especially one team, who is a little bit more on the fence in terms of like, how is my job going to change, it be impacted, because we're in the business of matching freelancers with companies. And we have things that are automated, but we still need a lot of actually human expertise in many cases, and also because we believe that this is going to be it's a combination of both that's going to lead to a great product and a great user experience. But these people, obviously, their job is changing drastically, and so there we're starting to see some questions about how is my job going to change, and there it's really about like the work we're going to be doing around. Positioning that as an assistant, right? These are our first users, and we're going to build a tool to assist them in their job, and evolve with them, and we're just starting on that journey. Yeah.
Questions? We have somebody there, and then somebody at the back. We can get a mic to you.
Two questions.
We can't hear you.
Oh,
Yeah,
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
I have two questions. One, you talk about the limitation of AI, so we need to know what are the limits. So what are the limits of AI right now for the product work? That's number one. And number two, in some companies, including mine, we're not allowed to use our proprietary data to share it on ChatGPT. So how do you overcome these limitations?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can take this if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So the first question was about the limitations. Okay, so there's a relatively recent paper that came out. It's called No Zero Shot Without Exponential Data. It's a very, very interesting research paper, just like, and the gist of it, and this is not final, it looks like that AI, with the methods that we have right now, is not going to reach, this exponential curve of like solving problems that it has never seen before. Now, what does that mean for PMs? Because the amount of data that we need is astronomical, right? Like, it does not exist. So a good example would be like if you have a model that is training and is trying to drive through traffic, there's always this one kind of situation that it cannot handle, right? So like full self-driving is extremely difficult because the examples it requires to kind of solve these situations are underrepresented in the data. And one of the hopes that we had when we were training AI is that at some point the model can figure it out themselves, so it does not need to have examples for everything. Now, why does that matter for PMs? Strategy, individual problems of companies. So you are trying to solve something for a very specific crowd. So when I was working at Small PDF, we had a competitor called Foxit. Same product, right? Like from the outside, almost the same product, but completely different kind of core audience, market shares, and so forth. So I think AI will never solve this part of the job, at least not in the next couple of years, right? Like to kind of figure out like what is a good strategy, how to calm down your developer when he has a nervous breakdown and so forth. We might be laughing, but like a lot of these things, we have to remember that AI is training on the internet. There's another world on the outside as well, where we also talk about interactions with real people. And I think that's where always the limitation will be. Be careful, and when you make big claims, verify them. Be sure when you do research, for instance, on papers, and then that it shows you, and then you base your entire company on it, at least take another look, right? Don't end up like this lawyer that started to cite cases that do not exist in front of a judge. That's just embarrassing, right? And yeah, I forgot the second question. I'm so sorry. I'm just a scatterbrain today.
How do you overcome the company policy to not use the proprietary data?
You take that.
Yeah, I want to plus one.
You don't take that.
Nice one.
I want to plus one something real quick. Current transformer-based large language models are not very good at high precision yet, meaning that most PMs, like I think, we're communicators and connectors. And so because we do a lot of writing of what needs to happen and how that goes through goals and vision and like that stuff, I wouldn't consider that a high precision application. And so it's very good. But if you are in a high precision thing, like you're in taxes or finance, you should be double checking everything. In fact, even with our medium precision workflows as PMs, you should also be double checking. Because you don't really want to make up stuff when you want to talk to your CPO or talk to your board. That's just malpractice. So you should approach all this with skepticism. It is a generative AI. It's not perfection, and they hallucinate. And so that's the main thing that you have to be wary of in terms of limitations. Check and check again. And if you're in a high precision situation, or you're building a high precision application, then you should be super wary of that. It's just like triangulating any piece of data you really need. In terms of being able to use it because your work is sensitive, I would say personally, for you, go get your account. It doesn't matter if it's Claude or whatever it is, and use it yourself for stuff that you need, just personal productivity, but not just personal productivity. Remember, I said it's immersion. You need to know how to deal with this stuff. You need to understand the consistency, when it hallucinates, when you can trust it, when you build an application around it. And then at work, it's just a matter of time. For the first 10 years of the cloud, AWS, the finance industry refused to go in there. The government refused to go in there. But everyone broke down because it was so useful. So I don't know how to help. I think you should just go take your CEO on a golf trip and just beg him or something. I don't know.
Can I add something
yes,
really quickly to this?
Go ahead,
really
time.
Quickly. Okay, so I have 10 PMs. If you would tell me, would I cut off my finger to be sure that they have never shared something sensitive inside of ChatGPT? I want to keep my finger, okay? So let's be realistic here. There's a legal side to this argument, what you should not do openly, and then what people actually do. Let's be honest, all of you have shared something they should not have shared on ChatGPT. The question is, does someone care, right? So there's a legal situation, and then there's this. I do expect my people to use it, and I think the first step to doing this responsibly is to say, hey, it's fine if you use ChatGPT. It's fine if you use this stuff, but if you're unsure, please ask, and so forth, and whatever. I mean, nobody wants to see my tax returns, but that's where I'm ending. Okay.
Thank you. On these wise words, we're at time. We're going to close our talk. Thank you so much for being here. We can continue the conversation over lunch.
Thank you.
Big round of applause for our speakers. Thank you, guys.